and talk about what does the town map do to appraisals, and the listers did some more research on that. If you weren't aware of that, it's been Al Sand's #1 issue for 6 months. We're really concerned about what does the proposed land use map do to our appraisal of our properties. And if you notice the report, our answer is we don't know how to answer.
Yeah, I don't even know if you would have an answer for that. And their methodologies. No, I don't know if that would change. The listers, they're highly regulated as to what they can do. Now,
Well,
did the listers say anything?
Well, yeah, you'll see some emails in there. What I did was get a hold of Nancy Merrill, because I know Nancy, and I asked her, hey, do you guys look at the town plan when you do appraisals? She came back and said no, so.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And then you saw, I wrote a paragraph that did not capture her statements well. So then Hardy he actually wrote the sentences that I then sent out and said we're changing it to this, because he said that better captured what the listers had talked about. Since then, though, you'll see an email, because they continued to pursue it, and they got some more advice from, I forgot who, I think I just sent that email.
I didn't get it.
Didn't get it, I sent it 15 minutes ago, and I had to go all the way down to Brattleboro and up, I don't know.
I write it on the service and
Well, what I'll do when we talk about that is I'll just read it, because I've got it called up, and put it right into the minutes if we want to. How you doing, sir?
Fine.
Excellent. You ready to get started? All right. This is the party we're going to have tonight, because I got emails from the other two saying they cannot make it. Chris has been fighting an ailment, and I think if I understood Val's correctly, she's working and just couldn't get back in time from what she's doing. With that in mind, the TV camera's ready to go. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:35 this day of December 10th, 2019. Step 1 is approval of the agenda. Does everybody have a copy? You need a hard copy. Chuck, you need hard copies?
Thank you.
And you got one there? I would like to add, after Roman numeral 7, executive session for personnel. And then if there are no objections, I'll take that as an approval, consensus as amended.
Yes.
All right, we'll move from there then. Thank you. Next is approval of the regular minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody need copies of those? You all set? You got Matt or Chuck, minutes? Yeah. My minutes, so you know how I do them now, is I simply took the notes I thought were most pertinent during the meeting, and then Chuck wasn't here. The following night, I watched the Fact TV and went through and filled in the details and put the summary together that way. So it's my interpretation of the meeting. If there's any changes or corrections, let me know. If not, I'll take a motion to accept as presented. So, Eric?
Motion by Eric, second by Matt.
All in favor?
Aye.
That takes care of that piece. Thank you very much. Public comment, since we have no public, and we're going to move on because we've got other things to do. Correspondence communications, I have none at this point. Well, actually, why don't I read this one to you now with an explanation. It's probably a little bit out of date, out of order, because it deals with the town plan report, but it is correspondence. It's from the Grafton listers, is the actual email. Hi Dave, we haven't heard yet from our professional appraiser because we asked them to look at, does the professional appraiser look at the town proposed land use map in doing their appraisals? So we consulted our district advisor on the subject. Here is his response. Gail Ann, Hardy, and Nancy, I have been through several town plan changes in my town without noticeable effect. The town plan, as you may know, are visionary documents that do not come into play until someone files an Act 250 permit, and at that point they become somewhat regulatory. They tend to affect where stores and gas stations can or cannot be located. So that is from Cy Bailey. I don't know, I'm getting ahead, Chuck. You
No, I'm writing it.
Okay. District Advisor, Senior Property Assessor, Vermont Department of Taxes. So that must be their advisor, if you will, on how to do their job as listers. So that is a correspondence. I'll put it in there so it's been recorded. All right, and Chuck, you have an email, so at some point you can cut and paste that.
Will do.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, the only time I've heard the listers look at it is towns with zoning that have, you know, acreage minimums or maximums. It does affect build out.
That's what we kept hearing as,
Okay.
as we did that. But again, there's no definitive thing other than census listers don't look at the town plan. So, update reports, Wyndham Regional Commission.
Nothing to report?
We got a workshop on the same day, Thursday night as our,
Yeah, that's, there's an energy plan, for basically town plan energy chapter writing.
We're
At
ahead of the group.
Newbrook, Fire Department, and that's, Thursday night.
but we're ahead of the curve on that because ours is done, so it doesn't affect
Yes.
us. Oh, okay. All right, DRB is
We have a potential meeting that will be at 6 p.m. before our January meeting that's been proposed to the chair. Do you know if the chair's acted on that?
I have no idea.
We sent out the public notices, so we'll probably do it anyway.
subdivision or something?
Yeah, but it's not even technically it's a subdivision. Functionally, it's just the legal division of land for a family estate. So there's no development proposed. There's none of the things that we would be typically reviewing in a more traditional subdivision.
Oh, okay.
So, is that a fair?
I think so. If I'm not mistaken, you arranged it in several minor subdivisions. Is that correct?
Yes. So in order to avoid the scrutiny of, say, the Act 250 side of things or a major subdivision, many of the parcels are not being created now. They're just existing parcels or absorbing additional land. So, you know, if you're a family member and now you have 10 acres and your mother has given you an extra 10, you just get a 20-acre parcel, but you don't actually become two parcels. You just become a bigger single parcel.
So it's changing boundary lines, not
That's right.
adding up.
But it doesn't
not-
change.
Not subdividing.
We're not
moving lines
creating new
around.
lots. Yes.
And that's the big deal often in your world, right? Is that
Yes,
new-
that's a big distinction.
Okay.
We wouldn't have done that unless we understood the intent was really just a legal arrangement among existing family members.
Family,
Yeah.
with one estate.
So they don't need to be dealing with Act 250.
All right, thanks. Village wastewater? Is that you?
Not me.
Not you, that's Chris,
Uh,
and, Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
No, our meeting Thursday was canceled, but we're gonna just continue to follow up on existing systems, review the studies that we had done in the past, and just gathering more information about options and new ideas.
Anything on the docket or planned for March meeting as far as resolutions or anything at all, or not from your group?
Not
Way
yet.
too early to even
Yep.
go near that. Okay. All right, very good. Select board with Chris not here, I'm not sure that we can get any kind of report from them. Everybody's aware that the potentially, did everybody get that email from Bill explaining the three options at the public hearing?
Don't recall.
It's in the warning, and Bill, I think, did an excellent job of laying out the three options. I will try to do them from memory, but I may have to call them up. Option one is they approve the plan as written. Therefore, if it is approved, it goes to a town meeting, which will be, and they've got the date set. I don't have them here, but I think it's January 13th, and then by law, I think a week before they have one of those informational meetings, and then hearing, or excuse me, and then Australian ballot
Right.
vote, excuse me. That's one option. Second option is that the select board makes any kind of substantial change. If they do that, it means you have to call another public hearing, and that will go beyond the 1-year deadline as established by our hearing a year ago in January, and therefore it is automatically, I don't want to use my terminology, I'll say rejected, but I'm not sure if there's a better legal term for that. But it goes back to us, and then we have to figure out where to go. And then option three is they vote to not accept it as written, and the same thing, it goes back to us. So hopefully they approve it, but we'll see. The only change that I sent him an email about that I wanted him to be aware of is technically the title will be wrong when it gets adopted.
Yeah.
Is that a substantial change?
Nope.
I didn't think so, but that was the only thing that kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop, so. That's what I've got from them, and I don't have anything else for updates and reports, so if not, I'm gonna move on to unfinished business. A, town plan. You've got one there. I don't know if you want another hard copy, but printed them out.
Oh, I got it.
You all set? All right. Chuck, I'm gonna make sure that I get this right, excuse me, so kind of guide me through it. We developed a town plan. I sent this to you folks after about 4 or 5 days, maybe a little longer than that. I did send it to the select board. There were several changes from the original. I also, sent it to John Bennett of the Wyndham Regional Planning Commission for his review. He came back with a couple of minor technical edits, and I honestly can't name them right now, but they were of the nature that I talked about. One of the opportunities that is actually a grant opportunity, and he described it as a statute, and it's not a statute, it's a voluntary thing, but if you don't do it, he said you can't call that a statute, and I think it was under the flood system, and I forgot what it was minor, and I made that change. That was early on, so it's not in the last week or so. And then I think you got the email that the original had a paragraph that I developed based on a conversation from the listers. Merrill got hold of me and said that wasn't an accurate or correct interpretation of what the listers were saying. He actually wrote the text, I cut and pasted it in to say, and he came back and said, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So this has that change on, I think it was page 5, number 2, if I remember right. Yeah, page 5, number 2. With that, I'll open it up for discussion, questions or comments, and if not, the next step is to take a motion to accept as written unless there are changes.
When you sent this to John Bennett.
Yep.
Was he happy with all of this series 1 through 5?
He saw it as written. The only change is to number 2, and really the change is the second sentence of number 2. Is again, that's what Hardy sent me, is that sentence.
Okay.
The only, and I'd have to look, but it was. Again, his thing was one of these things where I put in that we want to do this plan to meet a statute, and he said, no, it's not really to meet a statute, it's to one of those many things to get you down to 7.5% for the erosion thing, I think it was. And like I say, I don't remember which one it was, and I can find it if you're interested, but a technical glitch, not a substantial glitch kind of thing. So. Actually, if you hold on, I almost remember getting. I got an email from him at 5:30 tonight saying he tried to call and left me a phone message. He says, if I can't talk to you, I'm sorry, but if it's any comfort, I think you did a good job with the report. Didn't find any other salient points. Best of luck. So,
Good.
you know, that's kind of where he's at on that one.
Yeah.
Do you want a motion to accept?
We need to make this one very official so that at the hearing on Thursday, they have not the draft, but the official report. So yes. Is that what you're saying? He's making a motion?
Make a motion to accept the report
As written?
as written.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 With a quorum, it is passed as written. I will take this, remove the word draft, resend it to Bill. He can take the draft out, I know, but I'll do it and make it to Joe as well, saying this is officially the report I'll CC everybody so everybody's got it, that we know that is the official report. All right. I'm gonna skip B, and you'll see why, because I got some other things I'd rather talk about. Village center designation in the community survey here, and again, until that town report is approved, there's not much we can do in some other areas. Chuck, I'll ask you if you know, Eric, you've been around for a while, because we're jumping over to village center designation. Going through the checklist, I should have realized and didn't think about it. I kind of set a timeline and said, we got a lot of the village center stuff done. Probably by March we'll be ready to submit it. If our town plan is adopted in January, how long after that do you think it's going to take for the regional to approve it? Because I can't submit this until the regional approves it, not just local towns.
Yeah, Wyndham works unusually fast,
Oh,
but it would be anywhere from, it could be a 4-week, 6-week long
I was
process.
thinking 4 weeks. Or
Yeah.
minimum.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it used to be longer, and now they've changed their definitions for quorums because they had a
Yeah.
lot of difficulty
Hmm.
with town plans. They still have to assemble a commissioner committee to review the town plan. That in itself usually takes a few weeks. So,
And they all got to read the plan.
I'm thinking 2 months maybe.
Yeah. The only thing I think is shorter is because they have been consistently watching us work. So, at least from the staff perspective, I understand, that ultimately they're not the final approval, but they're.
In respect to John, every time I've gone to him with feedback, he always puts that footnote at the bottom.
Yes.
And don't forget, I'm not the guy that approves it.
Yeah.
I can just give you my opinion.
That's right.
So once they have the committee of commissioners, then a hearing actually gets scheduled in town. That is, by the this town, by the Wyndham Regional Commission,
That's cool.
to review it again.
Okay.
So they'd be like 6 p.m.
And then it
it's right
goes,
before us.
then it goes to the next commissioners meeting, which happens about every other month now. They used to be every month, but it's every other month. So if you happen to hit the right cycle, you'll have only a month or less between that hearing and
Depending on the
being able
timing.
to get it before the commissioners meeting. So your expectation is valid.
Okay.
It may be slightly optimistic, but it's within reason.
Okay. But that helps me, because I was like in this mindset of like, great, shift into fifth gear and let's get this thing done. It's going to be a while after our town's done with it to get all of it done so we can submit it.
If we had it with Jeff was going to spruce up the map to make it more detailed,
Right.
then that's still in process.
And that's where we're going to shift to is the village center designation, and I got a couple of handouts and I've started doing a little bit of work, and I keep hearing it's like, boy, we got most of this village center done. There's still some work to be done. And so this is just I'm a visual guy. So I went to their PDF and I cut and pasted the checklist that we need to do to turn in the application. And I'd like to, with your indulgence, run through this to see kind of where we're at and what's going on with this.
Oh, we nailed the first step.
What's that? What is the name of the municipality? Is it Town of Grafton? You brought up Village, Grafton Village, Village of Grafton. When we do this documentation,
all
does
town.
whatever we name that matter? Is that gonna end up on some legal document to all of a sudden that's what we're gonna call it?
Well, there are a lot of trademarks with Grafton Village.
The cheeses and
Grafton
everything
Village
else?
Cheese, Grafton Village Garage, maybe, I don't know if the Forest still calls it Grafton Village Garage, what's the for a name on it?
Yeah,
Grafton Village Garage.
it has to be the town of Grafton.
Yeah.
So our municipality is the Town of
The
Grafton.
political
Yes.
subdivision.
Is there going to be a title of the village is the next question. And what would that
Do
be?
you have the political, is it called a political subdivision? Village,
No.
properly name it? Or would you name it? Do you have to name it?
In the work I've done so far,
Grafton Village or Village of?
I have used a little bit of both without thinking about it until you and I started that email. It's like, wait a minute.
I don't think there's any legal entity
All right.
for it, so.
Let me pass out some of the papers because I felt like killing trees, so I got some more papers. This is a piece of sausage. And we know how sausage is made, so I wanted to make that clear as you look at this. This is actually my Microsoft Word file that will be the cover letter. You'll notice the first 4 items and then a line. Those 4 items are the checklist. So below that line, I better have all 4 of those things. All right? It's bulleted and so forth. I'll turn it into sentences later. I've also been to multiple town sites. There are only a couple of VDC applications that I could find online, but some of this and some other stuff I'm going to give you in this respect, I've cut and pasted from a couple that were on town websites that have been approved. My thought is, well, if that's approved by their stuff, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. You can see, Dear Mr. Amori, everybody kind of started out with that same headline. Grafton letterhead, I got hold of Kim. Kim's going to give me a Grafton letterhead, so we'll put that up at the top. I'd like to submit the following packet according to VSA 2793A. Then, as the list says, a narrative of why you seek the designation. Again, I'll be honest, I went to things like the application and what the reasoning for the village center designation is. I cut and pasted their stuff. I went to multiple cover letters. I kind of cut and pasted their stuff. Then I rearranged it, and what it looked like to me is, as you see there, is we want this for technical assistance, and then I kind of have a section about maintaining. You read that, that's very sausagey. That won't be a finished sentence, but I tried to stick all the words that matter in there, as in core historic settlement pattern, mixed residential, civic, regional, religious, commercial, and mixed-use buildings, and then separated by blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to put all this in there. Then I'll cut back afterwards. Did Chris send an email to everyone or just me with a long list of work that's being done? Just me.
Yeah.
You'll notice the next section down, just at the bottom of the page, previous and current revitalization activities, and there's a bulleted list. I want your feedback. I'm not going to list all of those. That's the list that Chris sent me. What are the recent revitalization activities in the village that have gone on? Current and potential. For example, there's a lot of talk about work on the town hall that needs to be done. Is that correct?
Continued work, especially for energy efficiency.
I was thinking that piece among other things. So, all the other reports, applications, listed 3, 4, maybe 5 maximum things that their village is doing in terms of revitalization and where they're going. I've got a list, if you turn this over on the back side, I got a list of 20 things. I'm not going to list 20 things. What do you want me to list? What would be number 1, 2, and 3? Me personally, I'd like to talk about the brick church. But again, I'd like consensus on that.
Did the Kidder Hill covered bridge make it into the final?
No,
Yeah, so that's out.
no. Where those 2 streets, where the corner is at the old pump house. Yeah, none of that street got in. I've also looked at a bunch of maps since we developed ours. Ours is still pretty big, you know, and Mr. Amori is concerned about that. It goes way down Townsend Road, in my opinion. But
To go back to
yes,
the reason that we want to have the designation, I was under the impression that village center designation had a lot more to do with trying to support commercialization than historic preservation.
this is text I took, and I didn't bring the application, from that brochure that's on their website about the application.
Okay.
And this was in there. And again, if I understand it right, and we've had this discussion before, it's kind of a strange concept to me because Grafton doesn't fit the model, but they keep talking at the state level of tightly clustered commercial areas and that kind of stuff, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Go ahead.
Historic preservation in and of itself, I believe there's a impetus behind this village center designation to try to aid and grants and that sort of stuff for people that are trying to run businesses within.
Yeah.
And the commercial element of this, I think, has to be part of our reason for a village center designation.
So say that again, the commercial development
Yeah,
would be the term you think.
Yeah, we see this in Bellows Falls, but for this program, they would be in the red. Because of this program, they've gotten enough credits and it's little pots here and there that these folks, get involved in. They're
Can you
able to,
elaborate on that? Because I put the words in and the tax credits and all that, but it was really confusing. So you've got businesses in the village of Bellows Falls.
that will point blank tell you, we could not make the numbers work unless this was a downtown, designated downtown. Because it gave us access to enough credits and enough resources that we were able to get over the finish line and make a workable business.
And does each of those businesses get help on how to do that from the village, or more they go directly to the state? How does that
It's
work?
all of the above, yes. So they get local assistance, but they've also been able to access state programs. So, and it's something as prosaic as upgrading for sprinkler systems and elevators, basic fire code kind of life safety things, all the way to businesses qualifying for grants to open up. And
In that, okay.
Yeah. There's just a myriad of programs, and it's
It's like a circle or a triangle of profit, nonprofit, and municipal.
and the people I've talked to, that's not my area of competency. I'm there permitting them and realizing, oh, you wouldn't be here, but and totally private, for profit, but they can't make the numbers work unless they were in this designated.
It's just one more bean on that side of the scale that makes it happen. kind of
Yes.
thing, so.
Because otherwise, it'd be much better off doing some kind of strip development somewhere. But it's more expensive to be in the downtown, and these programs take the bite out of that.
Let's focus and go deeper into what you're saying. I'm going to read from a page, Designated Village Centers Program Benefits. I won't read it all, but I'll paraphrase. Number one, technical assistance provided the state. 2, downtown and village center tax credits, and they list 3. 10% historic tax credits, 25% historic tax credits, and 50% code improvement tax credits. And it sounds like they actually list sprinkler systems in here.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, 50% tax credits, a chunk of change. So it's got historic, but it's definitely the 50% in the private business is a big piece, obviously. Then it goes to the next one after tax credits is priority consideration for state grants. And then they list a whole slew of them there. Priority consideration by state building and general services. What does that mean? Does anybody know? By the state building and general services when leasing or constructing buildings.
We've seen that in St. Jay, we've seen that in Barry, Montpelier, where the state has to prioritize locating its offices in those designated areas.
Probably not going to be in Grafton.
No.
Okay. Good to know, just in case they want to open a regional office down here.
Yeah.
And then we have not talked about it. I need information about it. I don't know anything about it. Neighborhood development area eligibility, which sounds like it's the next area around the village. I don't know if that'd be appropriate for us because we don't have a neighborhood really outside of that. But you can't apply for the neighborhood designation until you get the village designation. So, I don't know the ability to do that.
It'd be really nice if there were businesses in the village core which could draw from people that live close enough to walk, for instance.
That would be, in fact, that's one of the
It'll be cool.
state goals, is exactly that. So the key point is, I've got like 4 or 5 bullets here under the reason we want this. I need to put more emphasis on this support commercial development
I think, yeah.
kind of piece.
They're
Everybody
gonna see
okay
the
with that?
argument for that. That might actually help us with the designation further south, just because of everything that Wyndham's doing, the foundation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And to be clear, this is a draft. We're getting feedback. I'll make it certified. We'll bring it back another time, and at some point you'll say, yeah, that's what we consensus say. Once we get all of this together, the state requires one single file, preferably PDF format, of the entire application. Maps, everything. Before we send that out, my plan is to bring it to us as a group and make sure it's what we want, formally vote on it, then take it to the select board and say, this is what the application looks like. Are we on the right page, same page? And if so, we go from there. All right?
This is exciting.
So we're taking baby steps towards that. Anything else under the reasoning section of why we want the village center designation? I'm back to my question of what do you want me to emphasize for no more than 5, 3 to 5 restoration projects, things that are going on. My son changed all the incandescent lights to LEDs in the street lamps, but that's probably not as big a deal, so.
Well, a lot of these are, private projects that were done. The benefit of the village were done privately by corporation.
You know, and when he sent this list, he actually said something about, I realize most of these are Wyndham Foundation projects. But then you read this, a list of previous and current revitalization activities. It doesn't say by the town. I don't know if it means by the town, because there's no other details besides that
Well,
sentence.
they were all done with the intent to improve the village.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can one live without the other? Can the town live without
They go hand in hand.
corporation, or can corporation live without the town?
Well, my thought in here is to talk more about, because when you read some of this village center designation, it sounds more and originally designed for those ghost towns that are falling apart, and this will give you that big economic jumpstart to turn the curve and start going in the right direction. Grafton for decades has been going in the right direction by community members, Wyndham Foundation, private resident owners really upgrading those villages. There's not a lot of slum holes in the village of Grafton. They're all up there. So I'm going to try and write this as a continuous improvement and to maintain what we've got kind of approach. Because, I think Cambridgeport is not a village, but if they wrote a village application, they need vitalization that we don't need, if that makes any sense.
So, what about the possibilities of water, wastewater treatment in town?
That's got to be in there, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because that it becomes very important to whatever commercialization may take place.
Directly connected.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start with the brick church, the town hall, water, wastewater, and I'll put some paragraphs together and we'll see what you say about it. Is that all right? Anything else on? Oh, one more big thing. Go ahead.
Brick Church, which is the brick meeting house.
Yep.
What else?
Town hall, just they've done some weatherization. They do have more work to do. I know it's a constant point of discussion at select board meetings, or has been off and on for several years. Then water and wastewater are the 3 big ones that I'd like to focus on. Don't forget, folks, this is a cover letter. It's a page-long maximum. It's not a 5-page report. It's this is what it's about kind of stuff. The one question I've got is number 3. You will see at the top of this page, name, address, daytime phone number, email address of primary contact person. And I just put mine in there, but you know what? No other plan I looked at had the planning commission working on this. Every one of them was the town administrator. Or the select board that was submitting it, not planning commission, which I thought was, and it could be that the planning commission did the work, but the select board's name is on it as the presenter. So before I get hold of Bill and Joe, I thought I'd ask your opinion on it. Whose name belongs on it? Chuck, your name? I didn't, because you're not the town administrator. Joe's name, my name?
I think it says a lot of the history of this project starting at the commission, that the chair would sign off on it. That's just my personal feeling.
And so I would be the contact.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of acknowledges the work that Lisa Kissel and others did so many years ago, trying to push this along. When there was no other supporters, they were still out keeping this idea alive. So as we cross the finish line, I feel much better just having the planning commission sign off on it.
I'm okay with that, and I'll throw this caveat out. My position is, we work for the select board.
Yeah.
If we go to them and say, no, I want Joe's name there, I'm not gonna fight with them, it's,
No.
whatever you guys want. But we'll put that as a default and we'll go from there. We need a name to start with.
I like that.
Alright. Alright, so that's the cover letter. I'm going through these items. Authorization, town or village select board of trustees, or a municipal resolution. One of the town village center designation applications had a resolution. I hate inventing anything new, so my thought was to develop a resolution at the appropriate time, go to the select board and ask for them to look this over, approve it, sign it, and then it'll become part of the document.
Wasn't this, so this was signed before, a while ago, right?
Like 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't even look through the minutes to try and find that, because I thought that is not
No, it's no longer.
right.
Yeah.
So after we get this together, after the town plan is approved by us, or adopted by us, maybe not by the regional commission, my plan is to go to the select board and say, hey, this is one of the documents, are you comfortable voting for it, signing it, etc. Once we, I want enough that they're not signing a blank check. They're gonna ask, what does this application look like? So I'm gonna have at least the lion's share of it done when I show them this. Is that all right? We can go with that?
Yeah, it's good.
God knows we had the time, because they will have gotten past the town plan, so we'll have the packet ready for them.
That's my hope.
Yeah.
All right. Notification, Regional Planning Commission, Regional Development Corp. These are letters I need to write to the Wyndham Regional Commission, Chuck?
Yeah, that's usually pretty informal, you just ask John Bennett.
And it'll be included in this one long PDF file. And the Regional Development Corp, is that the Brattleboro Regional or the Springfield Regional, or what is that?
Eric, who covers this area?
I think it's Brattleboro
Yeah.
Regional Development.
And there are boundaries for those two organizations, so they both know the answer to that. It's not a vague boundary, I assume, right?
Yeah, probably synonymous with the county.
Yeah.
We have Bells Falls Area Development Corporation, but that's just,
And you use the Brattleboro, not the Springfield?
yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
we've ever, yeah.
Brattleboro for the Chroma,
Yeah,
for example.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. Flint is the director of the Springfield one. He's our board chair at my school, so I can probably just find out from him if we're in his catchment area or not. I haven't started that letter, I haven't even looked for it on those examples, but my guess is that's just a very short formal letter letting him know that we are applying for this. Do we ask him questions? We don't need their approval, Chuck?
No, they have a boilerplate letter they just will provide.
Okay, all right, so we'll put that together. Confirmed planning process. This looks like I will need to write a letter to myself confirming that our town plan conforms to that 4350 in the state goals. Is that correct, first of all, Chuck?
No, that's the Wyndham Regional's confirmation process we talked about.
Yeah, but it says a letter from the municipality, Regional Planning Commission, not us. So after they approve our town plan,
We get a letter.
so it's that letter just proving that we have a town plan.
That's right.
It's not a separate letter saying that we, the Regional Commission, are happy that you're going for the VDC, good luck kind of thing.
Yeah, that's just a town plan thing.
Oh, so that is saying we can't apply for this until we have the town plan done.
Yeah.
And that letter will be the proof that we have it done, that's all.
Yeah.
So I don't have to write a letter, that'll,
Be automatic.
okay, all right. Ooh, that's a good one. I don't have to do that one. I like that. Village center designation boundary. I don't know if you had a chance to look, but I got a little techie and I did a Google map of all the pictures. And so if you go to the link, Google Maps will open. There's a bunch of pins all over the village of Grafton in Google Maps. When you click on each pin, there is a explanation of what the picture is and then the photograph. And then so Jeff has those photographs, those locations. That's the last thing he wanted from me. I have not heard back from him since I sent him that about 2 weeks ago, but I did say it's probably going to be February or March before we're ready to rock on this. I'll still give him a notice and say, you know, we got to get going on this. As I look through this, I checked off everything on the first page. I did have a question about zoning districts, the very last one on the first page. In other words, I checked off all the things on that page because I know Jeff knows about them and is planning on doing them. Zoning district boundaries, if applicable, should be included. The two I thought of were pumping ordinance and flood zone. I got hold of Bill and he said, no, neither one of those are appropriate for this map. Do not include either of them.
That's right.
I hear that's right.
I would agree, I would confuse the issue.
Okay, and they're not zoning as in what they're defining here.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, pumping is an ordinance according to Bill. That's not zoning, right? So that one's, so, all right. And the last two on the backside, or the last one, historic boundaries, district boundaries. I have a map, I don't know if Jeff has it, of our historic district boundary. And he's got to include that on this map as well. And I'll make sure he's got that. I didn't think about that one. The next one is photographs. As I said, those are on the Google map of the link. If you want to go take a look at those should be straightforward. Municipal plan integration. Evidence that the municipal plan, the town plan, includes the intention to apply the village center designation. My assumption is that I need to write just a little analysis on that says in chapter 2 under goals we have village center discussed. In chapter 7 under housing those kinds of things, and this is where it connects to the town plan.
That makes sense.
What do you think it means? And again, I didn't get to this one on those samples I found from other towns. I'm hoping they have a sample that I can look at and say, oh, I'll just take what they're taking.
Include municipal plan excerpts.
So yeah, just going back and doing that. And we made a point of putting that in there in several places and where it would be valuable. Other information as required. Check me on this one. Municipal infrastructure. No water system, no wastewater, so that will not be included. The zoning district map, as I said before, the floodplain won't be in there and the pumping ordinance won't be in there. And I got an email from Bill stating and verifying that. And finally, we are on the, correct me, is it national historic or state or both? Anybody
I'm trying to
know?
look up the national, 'cause didn't we get on the register recently, Eric?
I don't know that.
I'm trying to look it up right now.
Would that be a Kim thing or somebody else that can most quickly and definitively answer that?
I'll find it. It'll take me a little while, so you guys can move to the next one.
Well,
I can think, well, Kim, and there's Maureen Sprague from Historical Society, Dick DeRozier. It had a lot to do with historic register. So one of the three ought to have a pretty good handle on where it is.
okay. Well, I'll start by emailing Jeff. Jeff may actually have the boundary already, and if so, I don't have to bother anybody else. But by making sure Jeff knows there is a historic boundary, it won't be left off, and we'll make sure that gets put on there. And they don't need the you know, I've laughed about it, because as far as I know, I think I thought of 4, I'm only thinking of 3 tonight. Different boundaries that define what the village is. Because the fire district, the pumping ordinance is called a fire district, if I remember right, by law. It has nothing to do with fire departments, but that's what they call it. There's a boundary there. Historic district is a boundary, and then this new village center is a third boundary that's not the same as the first two. So Oh, the fourth one is on our proposed land use map. That's a fourth boundary. It doesn't match any of the first three, if you remember right. So that's where we stand on that. Are there questions on the village center, where we're at and where we're going? This checklist, if you could, is I'll bring extra copies at future meetings, but this is what I'm gonna be going by. The goal is to get a little X. I got X's in places. I wanna get X's in every one of these things, and when we get X's in every one, we call it done.
We're on the National Register, it's 2010, which actually is more recent than I thought. That data is not uploaded to the database, so Jeff probably has the polygon. Be interesting to see how that matches our village center concept.
And I know I had a paper copy when we were doing,
Yeah.
especially when we were doing the proposed land use map, because I remember we had that out, was trying to figure out what is the village and what is not, so. I'll email Jeff, if he doesn't have it, I'll follow up, I'll make sure. State and national. If you're on the national, you're automatically on the state, two totally separate. Just because we're on the national doesn't mean we're on the state, we don't know.
I don't know. I do know that we've had historic districts make the state level, but just not big enough to get to the federal level. The fact that we're at the federal level is kind of the big cheese. That's it's a big deal, actually.
Are there any individual homes that are on
Yes,
the
100.
We got the post office.
Not in the village, well, in the village, probably
state
three
or
quarters of
state
it.
or national?
Congregational church, the chapel, these are all in the national.
National, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite the distinction.
We'll make a point of putting that list in there, probably, make sure we got it right.
Yeah.
This is what we're about, so.
Yeah.
All right. That's where we're at with the VCD. Anything else we want to throw at it, or we're kind of moving down the road and?
When were you presenting this to the select board?
Not until at least the town plan is adopted in Grafton. Maybe it's not done at the Wyndham level, but at least there. I could go to the select board, and if Chris was here, I would ask him to maybe take the checklist to get them thinking about it. I'm not gonna ask them for signatures on the resolution till I have the vast majority of this application ready, so they can look at it and say, yeah, we're signing off on this, not just some theoretical thing down the road. To give you a date, I would shoot for either the second January meeting or the first February meeting of the select board. It's a soft date, but that would be my goal, is to get, much like the town report, it went to them and it got corrections. The sooner I can get it to them and make sure we're all on the same page, rather than hitting them with 100% done, they're like, no, change these 20 things. No, let's get their opinion now and get it right now, so. Anything else?
Well,
Go
the
ahead.
one thing that select board should see is a presentation from Joe Moore.
How would you see that, though? They're not gonna see that.
No, can you come again?
He could come back and talk.
Because
I
that
don't know
was
if
quite
he does.
impressive.
Yeah, and maybe that's the thing, if you think it's appropriate, is to plan ourselves so, again, we get this at a point that is presentable in public, and then choose a select board date and see if Mr. Amori can come down here on that date and have that discussion about, this is where we're at. He talks about what has to go into it. He could actually give a little bit of feedback of whether we're on the right page or not. We can ask him. I don't know if he comes down in the evenings or not, or.
Yeah, they seem pretty flexible.
He did indicate he'd love to come back. I remember him saying that.
Pick him up on it.
Yeah.
So I got his email address.
If the select board is basically already on board on this, then you could probably avoid having him come down.
Well, that's true. If they're ready to just sign off, like I don't care, then we don't have to bother with him.
Might be worthwhile asking him first.
Maybe I'll do that just in a meeting ahead of time with this checklist and say, we're 80% done. It's gonna be another 2 months before we're 100% done, but we wanna let you know it's coming. And if you got questions or concerns, now it's time to talk about it, not when we're to the end. That might be the way to go on that. All right. Anything else? Community survey, like our town plan, it's been on there for 3 years. I got 2 documents here. They're big documents. but I want to get some feedback. And again, not having all 5 here, I think it'd be better, but at least I can get going in the right direction. I am a pretty rigid person the way I do certain things. I'm a guy that believes in having a vision. Vision creates your goals. Goals create strategies. Strategies create tactics. Work at the little stuff of the tactics. Succeed at your strategies. Succeed at your goals, etc. And in that avenue, I started. Lisa Kissel asked us, I think it was the last planning commission, or maybe the one before that. She said, "Why are you doing a town survey?" Even though she was on the planning commission, and she wasn't asking, like a very suspicious question, but it was a very curiosity, what are you looking to learn kind of thing. And so, I gave her my general answer, but it really brought me back to this idea of what is our big goal of this survey. For me, there are 3 things, and I had them written down, I didn't bring them with me. Thing number 1 is, if you read the law, it is one of the things the Planning Commission is actually supposed to do, is collect data and survey the community. So there's one big thing there. But then the other 2 things that I wrote down were to get a better sense of who our community citizens are. That's the data side of what we've been talking about. How many people live in your house, how far you drive to work, what are those kinds of questions. And the other is to get a better sense of people's opinions on a wide variety of areas. So, there's my premise of where I'm at. What I decided to do is say, how do you eat an elephant? Eat it one bite at a time. I'm going to challenge you to this. I went through, I got about 15 or 20 files of questions on surveys. And I pulled out all the questions that are fact questions. And my question to you is, what questions do we really want to ask our community in terms of facts? And I'm going to put a washcloth on this real quick. We have talked a lot about the idea that if this survey gets too long, nobody's going to want to take it. So obviously, 9 pages of fact questions before we get to opinions is ridiculous. What are the big priorities and why do you want them there is what I want to get out of this, because that will give me guidance in next steps of developing other parts of the survey. There's a lot of, this is again another piece of sausage, so it's not a ready for prime time kind of thing.
So are you thinking just head of household does the survey, or everyone? Every resident, every renter,
That's
every child?
another thing that we have not concluded. And it gets confusing because you can see, I'm going to pass out a subsequent document. It's a second piece of sausage, so I'm a little bit hesitant about this one. This is my ongoing draft of the actual survey, all right? Now, it's not approved by you guys, so it's not real, but it's just my work that I'm doing. Slide that over, thanks. You'll notice that I had a couple of factual questions in there, starting with whether you're a resident or not. And then question 2 really grabbed who we were talking about. Mm-hmm. But this is a change you'll see in there that I've made. I had questions like, do you own a house in Grafton? And I'm not done with this switching thought. So again, tell me no, don't go down there. I've changed it, do you own property in Grafton? It may or may not have a house on it, because there are people who own land in Grafton without buildings on it that are taxpayers, and therefore, in my opinion, probably ought to have some say about where their tax dollars go. The issues with children and things like that, I don't know how to, and that's why I passed this out. You'll notice, are you a resident or not? And let me take a step back and explain where my head's at with this. I said I want to challenge you with these fact questions of why do we need to know it. When you get to statistical analysis and we get a data point that says 32% of our community wants us to build only concrete buildings in town, whatever they say. That is a data point that is nice. But when you can take that data point and then start analyzing it based on factual data, then you can start getting a richer picture. 100% of the residents over 55 say they want concrete buildings, and 12% of those under 30 say they want it. Okay, now that may or may not be important to us, but you see, we're adding color to just that piece of what is your opinion. When you look at these facts, honestly, one approach could be, and it's a viable approach, you don't ask a single factual question at all. You just ask opinion questions. This is not my area of expertise. We've got to come up to a consensus of what is the best way to get the most accurate and complete data we can with what we've got to work with.
You have the factual survey, and then you have the opinion survey. There are two separate.
You can. I couldn't cross-match them though.
Yeah.
You know, unless the one person says I am a resident and I want concrete buildings in the same survey. I don't know who's who. But to your point, I've actually thought about, and again, choose a sector. I'll choose two that are pretty hot topics in this town. We could actually do a series of 3, 4, 5, or 6 surveys over a 3, 4, 5 year period. We could do one survey just on energy. Factual questions. How do you heat your house? Opinion questions. What's right for Grafton? We could do another one. That factual survey, as you know, if you've looked at it, a huge amount of wastewater. We can do just a survey on wastewater, and that would be a pretty rich survey by itself. Or we can just one slam the dunk. I mean, it's up to us as a group. This is kind of where my head in discussion and thought process is at. I'm curious where you guys are at now.
I think in order to do have the opinion survey be meaningful, you have to do a certain amount of fact surveying in order to figure out who's actually answering the opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's at a very minimum. The other thing that just overall, I think we're going to have a struggle to get a good representative response from the town, and it's going to take shoe leather. You're actually going to have to go out and interview people deliberately, because there'll be people who love surveys and will chuck their opinions at you and go way out of the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who would rather shut the blinds and not answer the door, that really could care less about any survey in their opinion. Both are equally important to us to understand. So it's going to take some real diligence on our part to get a good representative survey that we can actually use in a planning commission sense.
And there's a lot of questions that in that arena you just put out that I do not have answers for. How do we prevent somebody from stuffing the ballot box and filling it out 5 times? I mean, you know, do you go online? Do you do paper? Do you do both? I will continue to advocate for using a municipal planning grant and hiring professionals for the actual implementation of and maybe even, let me add to that, 2 parts. One would be implementation, but the other, depending on who we found, I mean, if there's actually a surveying company expertise out there, and I'll bet there is, if we went to them with, this is where we're at, not here, but we've got more work to do, they could actually do, I think, more work than that and say, now when we see what you want, let us help you make that more deliverable. And I don't know if we can do that with a municipal planning grid or not, but part of that is, you use the term, you know, leather on the ground is getting people, hiring people to do that. Contracting out, not us managing it, you know.
Okay.
And I've had that conversation with Bennett. He thinks that's a decent idea. He did not know anybody that could do that regionally, so we'll see where that goes. But your point is very well noted, I guess, is my point.
How did Rockingham do theirs?
Yeah, that was one of many surveys. It was that we've done, part of a municipal planning grant, the last one. But Eric is right on. It took us going to people, approaching them. You know, they had a very small percent that are gonna just be focused on making sure we know their opinion. Everyone else they were reluctant actors. We had a lot of success with the high school kids asking, you know, adults to take the survey. So even if this municipal planning grant is about paying some high school students from Grafton, you know, and getting them out there, you know, paying their mileage, paying their time.
Knocking on doors.
That's a great idea.
It
Gets them involved.
we used to joke, but, you know, myself and some of my commissioners, you know, we're older. We'd approach, adults see you coming like this. But a 17-year-old, you know, kid says, hey, would you take my survey? It was just immediate, like, okay, what do you want to know?
Let's support the youth and help them.
A little bit, yes, and then inform them about the town. So I think that's going to be one of the great things about the municipal planning grant. Now, some of these questions here, we can keep them and say to the listers, can you help us answer these questions? Or there could be a separate project, because some of the physical assets of the buildings and so forth, we would have listers cards that should have that kind of information.
And that's why I have this list. This is a cut and paste from various other town surveys.
That's right.
And so I've got way too many. Really, what I'd like from you is, as we go through this, do we need to ask those questions? So there's a lot on housing in here. How many of those do we really need to ask? All of them? None of them? What's your opinion?
Some of these can be gathered from the listers cards. That is paying somebody, again, probably like a high school kid, to pull all these
Clerical work.
physical cards. Yeah, pull the cards and see what the heating system is, if it's been recorded. Sometimes they don't. It depends on the town and what they collect for data.
What information are on these cards?
There's a lot of physical asset kind of information about a building. But let me back up just a bit and say that from my perspective, two areas that are of utmost importance to us in the near term from our climate impact are heating and transportation. And if we could make sure we cover those two areas in our surveying, it will be valuable.
Because our data stinks. These
That's
averages, they don't pan out for little Grafton.
It's where it really makes a big difference right now. We've got those two areas of energy consumption are the extraordinarily high ones. Our regular electric consumption is, you know, average or below, but our heating and transportation are huge consumers of energy, and that's where we have to concentrate our efforts in the very near term. So I would really like to have questions that address those two areas.
All right. Well, let's do this. We got executive session. It's going to take 10 minutes, and we got a little bit of time here. But what I'm going to do as fast as possible, I'm going to run through this and just give me a yes or no. Should we do this? I'm going to start with number one. I've got 3 things. My primary residence is Grafton, and I live there, whether it's, and this goes to you, a child or not. Are there other people that should be taking this besides those 3 cohorts?
You know, I'm so fixated on services and helping people that live here that there's just a part of me that says, you know, do you live in Grafton? Yes. Then we got all these questions. If you live in Grafton and you answer no, then you say, thanks for making the survey. You know, because we're interested in the roads and how they operate, or heating systems, you know, how people are consuming energy in their houses, you
Does
know.
anybody live in Chester but own a business and property in Grafton?
These land, you know, the landowners that live in Texas or, you know, Washington and other places, you know.
I'm going to remind you, because you weren't really here during it, but these two know where I'm going, is remember the wind vote and the discussion of should second homeowners be part of that or not. That got pretty hot.
Really?
That got pretty hot. Yeah. And I'm not saying include them with the second homeowners or not, But I just remember that experience is it got, yeah. There was non-residents coming to select board meetings and there was a petition, if I remember right, and some other stuff, so, yeah. Matt and Eric, who should be taking the survey?
I think anybody, it shouldn't be restricted to Grafton residents. It should be those that live in Grafton. The residency issue was one in the wind debate, granted. But here, opinions about what goes on in Grafton, from satisfaction of the roads, the utilities, or whatever, those second homeowners have just as much
I mean,
an input.
they're be residents, but they're here 6 months of the year.
Yeah,
So
And they have to have
be
the
included.
municipal needs.
Okay. So looking at question one, does that kind of capture, is there anybody else that should be included besides those three groups? Can anybody step up?
Primary residents, seasonal residents. I don't even know if we need to know if they rent or own. We struggled with that in Rockingham.
And that third one is there, again, just because I don't know if there is anybody, is, Matt, do you own your property over in Rockingham, or is that a rental? You've been there forever.
I own it.
You own that. That's what I was thinking of, somebody like you is, you own property in Rockingham, you pay taxes there, you run a business there, even though you don't live there, you ought to have a say in it. And that's kind of what I was thinking of number three.
And a lot of times we don't have a say.
No, and again, it's,
I may get a notice that something's happening in my area.
but you're not a voter, so you're not, they don't, that's the reality of life, so.
I mean, I can go to a hearing, if there's a construction of like when Roma did their improvement, we got a notice that they were gonna be doing this work. We could
The
go to
addition
hearing.
put on, yeah.
Yeah, because we're in a butter.
Mhm.
That's just
Oh,
a
yeah.
requirement,
Of course,
yeah.
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna spend all night on these. Question two, there's no reason to be in there, but I can ask that. That's a curiosity question. Who cares where you live if you don't live here? Or do we? That 80% of our second homeowners come from New Jersey or something. Is that important for this survey?
Geez, we can pull that from the listers data.
Again, a reminder, there's 75 questions here right now.
Yeah.
If we don't start crossing some of these out, we're gonna have 75 at the end of it.
I don't think that's relevant. I'd take that one out.
And that's where you could set that aside and say, let's go through the listers cards.
Mm-hmm.
It is always surreal to do a butters mailing here because basically you mail across the country. Every other town I've worked with,
Oh, I see what
80,
you're saying.
90% of them are, just town folks, P.O. Box X.
Mm-hmm.
Here I'm mailing to all sorts of places.
Everywhere from California to Florida to
Houston, yeah, you name it.
Well, you jump to number 3.
Yep.
Do you plan to move or retire here? That's a interesting question.
I like that one, yeah.
We can keep it. It's a curiosity question that is not going to be used in cross-referencing the opinion questions, I don't think. But it is one that I was curious about. So, again, we're not ready to do this yet. If you want to keep it, we can come back later and if you change your mind. I mean, if we're done and we crossed out 2 out of the 75, we're going to have to go through it again. All right. Number 4, how many months a year do you live here? It's listed like a pull-down menu is the way I got that set up, right? When we do that, if it's electronic. Yes or no?
I think that's important.
Eric?
Yeah, this is,
That's the core.
yeah, it's telling you who the person is that's answering the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Without a name on it, but.
Number 5, do you care how long you lived here?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
And lived in Grafton, whether you owned or rented or,
Well, I've got have you owned property. Should that be changed to live?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm 16. I've lived here my whole life. I've never owned a single matchstick.
So this is just lived.
Yeah.
All right. And actually, I should have 0 years probably as a true option for that second homeowner, even though they count. Well, I've owned a home for 12 months, 1 month a year, so that's 1 year I've been here. I don't know if that works out. Who cares if they're a native? Yes or no?
It's a kind of question that, I think makes sense, but,
It doesn't matter.
does it matter?
As much as we want it. See, this is the struggle I've
Yeah, I
been.
didn't think it.
Alright. Again, we can come back I'm not gonna delete these into Never Never Land. I'll keep them in the bank and we can look at them again and again. Native Vermont, same thing then?
Yeah.
How about how long, how long have you lived here versus how long do you plan on living here?
That's important. That was startling at the Rockingham survey. Some
Really?
people had poor expectations of their longevity in town, and that tells you a lot.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah,
Again, I'd rather go conservative on deleting these tonight, but I do need to parse it down.
The only issue we had with that question was somebody that, was 80. And that you were kind of, so, yeah.
I thought about that when I wrote it, actually. I didn't know how to frame that in that respect.
How many years on God's green earth do you have? That's,
How about the demographics of the house itself? How many people live there and what are their ages? Yes or no?
Are we gonna get that in the census? We might be able to nick that.
That would be 2010 census, correct?
2020.
Not out yet.
No, but we'll be collecting all that data and.
But when will that data be available? 21, 22?
22, 23.
census data can't be tied to this data because census data
That's
has all the personal information stripped off from it, so you can't tie.
It'd be a separate data set from
Yeah.
this.
Oh, yeah.
without a doubt. Yeah. All right. Number 10 was one I grabbed from the education section. I moved these around a little bit. Do we care about that or not?
This is where we get into like the sub-surveys where we're looking at the listers cards, but we're also quizzing educators and administrators of the school just to get a better sense of, where the kids are.
Well, and there's a question that I will frame that, Chuck, you have done an excellent job already several times of. Is there other places we can get this data besides this survey?
Yeah.
Answer lister cards, answer school records, possibly. Probably. Yeah, I could get that from Mary Beth, right?
That's right.
How many distinct parent names are there? And we'd have that, so. Eliminate it, keep it.
You can get it elsewhere on this question.
The only ones I keep, even though we can get it elsewhere, is when we think that piece of information wants to be used to help describe an opinion question. In other words, if we can get, I don't know how to think of one.
Or it ties into another question.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You wanna
yeah.
have that individual profile built,
That's, yeah.
where you have all these separate databases. You don't have a way of bringing them together.
Yeah.
Do you care about their education?
You do?
We don't?
You don't?
Okay.
For me, it was a curiosity question to get a more accurate profile of our community. I don't know how I'd ever tie that to some of the other questions and why we bother with, what's your opinion of wastewater? Well, 42% of those with college degrees feel we should get it. But I am curious. I believe that our town probably has a higher overall educational citizenship than other towns around us, just because we have so many retirees that had the money to move here. They got the money by probably having an education. That's my biased opinion. So.
That's worthwhile in the town plan to say to a prospective employer, we have, a certain type of person that lives in Grafton. Generally, you're correct. I bump into people with very high educational levels. Yeah.
Retirees are definitely so. How about, do we care how much they make?
No.
Or maybe far less categories.
That is probably a low priority. And besides that, you're gonna get a lot of pushback from people
Not answering at all.
not wanting to answer it.
Skip it?
I would skip it.
Okay. Do we care what road they live on?
Heck, yes.
I think that's something you ought to have.
Okay. Being aware that this could be an identifier for certain individuals because certain roads only have one house on them. So it just, it's the one thing I thought of when I put the list together. All right, we'll keep it. How about the type of building they live in?
Lister car.
Lister cars would have that?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Bedrooms in the dwelling, same thing?
Yep.
Because, all right. Year the dwelling was built?
Yep.
Is it important for those bits of information to be tied back to anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those people highly educated have more bedrooms.
I honestly don't see how it would matter if.
And fewer children.
Yeah, not to make joke of it, the people with 3-bedroom houses are more likely to, they probably are more likely to want septic if they live in the village and they got a 4-bedroom house, I guess, so. I honestly can't see that connection, but I'm not saying it isn't there. Well, why don't we identify what are listers for now, and then we can kind of think that through. Down to number 17, acres would come from listers. 18, what year did you start living at this address? I think I got that elsewhere already. How many years have you lived here? Yeah, so we crossed that one off. Again, a lot of this was cut and paste from multiple sources. So, household income has already been just gotten rid of. How about number 20? This goes into the economic and career and side of it.
And transportation.
And it leads into transportation as well.
I would add the gig economy. Bump into a lot of people like that. You get a little money from here for doing this, a little money from here for doing that, and they somehow cobble together.
So some kind of,
The gig economy, I guess, is covered by, I work from home for a company that is not based in Grafton.
it does cover that one, I think. An interesting one, I guess it's semantics. I just know a lot of people that don't have one 40-hour-a-week job, but they've got multiple employers, multiple.
Okay, yeah, that's.
But I can think I can tweak that in some of these in a way that would cover that.
And that really strikes to the kind of lifestyle people have.
That's kind of what I was.
You do a 9-to-5er, same paycheck, same company. It's very different than some of the people that show amazing creativity, have 2 or 3 jobs, unable to commit to evening meetings and stuff like that.
I think one of the things that jumps out at me was a number I came across. 635 residents in Grafton, 116 had jobs.
That's low.
Wow.
Where'd you get that from?
It was a data set back when we were doing town plan from the State Department of Labor, I think it was. It was 116 out of 635. But then you stop and think about it, how many retirees does this town have? Take them out, take kids out, take some disability out, and there's not that many people that actually work in this town.
That goes back to those sampling methodologies that they have. When we're such a small population, if
Yeah.
you look at the deviations, it'll say plus or minus 100. You're like,
Yeah,
they're sampling it. So,
And I can't remember where this came from. It was not a survey though, it was a data set from, like I say, Department of Labor, so I'm assuming it was more accurate than a sampling, so. Do I keep number 20 in?
yeah, I think
Why?
that's
So, yes.
Yes?
some version of that.
It needs some tweaking. There's
Okay.
A few things in here we probably shouldn't ask.
You know, I didn't know how to word some of these. I tried to independently wealthy is a
Yeah.
kind of a catchphrase that it has a little bit negative turn to some people. I don't know, but
Everyone checking it off.
Trust fund slacker.
yeah, I mean, it's, I didn't want to have any kind of negatives. So we'll keep it. We got to tweak that one. Is what I've got. What about the next one? Where do you work? And again, these are federal categories. I don't know if they're good categories. A lot of people don't think that way, but. Two-part question. Do we ask it? And if so, is there a better way to do a sector description than the federal model? It could be just manufacturing, healthcare, and forest service. I mean, the three biggies in our
Or
area.
you can break it down to professional service, maybe more general categories.
Yeah, like white collar.
Blue collar.
Thank you.
Well, everybody know what that
No
means.
collar.
Not the younger kids, they don't know.
Does everybody know what white collar job means versus a blue collar job? You know? And I don't want to go skilled or unskilled because somebody's going to say I got to check unskilled. I mean, what is, some people argue every job is skilled because you got to do it.
I think these categories are fine.
I have a blue shirt that I wear with a tie.
I don't know what it's going to say until we do it. So, all right. Well, let's leave them for now, and we'll talk about it. Maybe I'll look for a couple of other models, but that's what we've got for now. Now we're getting to questions. Eric was interested in transportation. These are cut and paste from a couple of sources. There's not many, though. Is there enough? Do you want more? What are we not asking? What should not be asked? How long is your commute to work? Is that in there, Eric? Yes or no?
That definitely is directly related to the amount of energy required to move you from home to work.
There's an argument to say you standardize the question so it's all mileage. Obviously, in an urban paradigm, time is more relevant.
Well, you notice I did 22 and 23, and I don't know. Kind of asked the same question twice, if you will.
That's right. That's a big deal, and that's directly to Eric's point.
Well, it's interesting, just as a caveat, I talked to a man who is a Grafton resident, and his commute to work is 12 hours. Talked to him today. It's Rod Lawrence. If you know Rod, his business is in Toronto, and he travels up there multiple times every month, back and forth. And he's done it for 25, 30 years, he's been making that drive. So anyways, 22 and 23, do you want one or the other, or both? Or neither?
Repeat that.
Questions 22 and 23 are somewhat redundant. There's a little overlap there. Do you want one or the other, or both?
Certainly 22, 23 speaks to the total amount of mileage you put on your car.
That's harder for people to conceive of. They do know their commuting mileage,
Yeah.
and we can extract from that. So I'd drop 23.
You know, you can go annual. I don't know. People know a better idea how many they put on annually, or because you got a good point. If you were to ask me what I put on a week, actually, I drive for a living. I could probably do it better than most, but I still have to do some thought. And I go back to one of the things on a survey is I don't want them thinking too much because they're gonna get bored with it and throw it away. So
It's either on the top of my mind or top of my head. Or
every
top of
question
my
should
head.
be top of the mind answers. I like
Yeah.
that approach. So leave 22 and let's not consider 23. I think.
Yeah.
The more I read that is mileage is a hard one. I can tell you how many minutes it takes me to get to work quick and easy. That's not hard at all. Registered automobiles, vans, trucks, in 1 ton capacity or less? Question 24. Again, expand it, change it, add to it, delete it.
That's on the line, but I like it.
Rather keep it and maybe throw it away later depending on where this goes. And average mile per vehicle?
That's
essential.
important.
Okay. I'm gonna stop there and say, Eric, starting with you, but others obviously as well. What's not being asked? You said transportation needs to be asked about. What am I not asking in this? Do you wanna get into, do you own a gas, a diesel, a hybrid, or pure electric, for example? I think that was in here. Where'd that go?
Yeah, it's 26.
What
but
is it?
That's
Oh, there it is, yeah.
That's the kind of
I
question
skipped that
that
one, I'm sorry, yeah.
it's sort of important, but nobody carpools, so it's not like it's.
We know the answer already, so
That's
should we
kind of
even ask it?
Whereas the our vehicle fleet average is probably got dismal miles per gallon, just because you need a heavier duty vehicle to navigate our roads. So you're going to see lower MPG as a general rule.
I didn't think about that, yeah, you're right, you don't see it's unusual to see the high mileage cars because we need something rugged enough to take the beating.
That's right.
Although you make it here in your golf cart.
And you make fun of me every time.
And that, rightly so. Do we leave 26 or do we really know that answer already?
Yeah, we kind of know the answer.
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah.
26, okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just want to make sure I don't skip over that. So under transportation again, what's not being asked?
Boy, these are the big ones. I can't think of anything we're leaving out, Eric.
Do you, hybrid cars, do you have a hybrid car?
We can ask.
Have you considered a hybrid car?
That would be an opinion question, not a fact question. And it may actually, it does exist I have a whole other document of just the opinion questions. There's actually too many. I didn't bring those. These are the fact questions. Maybe I did this thematically. I said, let's get the facts, that's our theme.
Sure.
Maybe next one, I'll bring the theme of just transportation questions, fact and opinion, because there's honestly way too many opinion questions about transportation, in my opinion, because it gets into.
So with that said, do you do the facts and then automatically jump into the opinion so it's right on their mind? You've asked the facts, okay, now.
And that'll be the
Yeah,
next step, is the
transportation
organizational step of where do you put these questions in relation to others,
Yeah.
so.
You have transportation and energy or transportation section, energy section in your home, and then jump from the facts to a
Right.
few opinions and.
I think that's gonna be the way it's gotta be laid out, or it's not gonna flow.
Right, that's on your mind and
Yeah.
go to the next thing.
Yeah, all about energy, good, that's done, let's get to the next one.
Isn't that how you did yours?
Yeah,
It was categorized, so you have the facts and then you have the opinions, right?
that's right.
You've got, through question 39, all related, factual questions related to your water and wastewater system. That could be a standalone survey at some point.
How about we take and review this with the water committee?
Could you do that?
Yep.
Why don't you take those questions and get some
We're
feedback?
at that point where we can start working on this a little
And
bit.
you know, it may be appropriate to pull that out and have a separate mini survey just on that.
Yeah, because we've talked about a survey.
You probably haven't gone to this level. Would you survey the village or the entire town?
Good question.
You'd probably get better data if you focus just on the village. Once you plan on running septic up to my place.
I just think with the facts, either the lister's cards have it or we already sort of know the answer. Septic tank, cesspool, or old jalopy. It's gonna be your three choices.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this, do you want any questions, and again, being on the septic committee, maybe we shouldn't get an answer tonight. Should there be any questions about water sources or septic in this survey? And if so, in general, what do you want to know? Chuck makes a good point. A lot of these answers may be gotten from listers. But if we get it that way, as Eric has pointed out multiple times now, you can't cross-reference them.
Now, I do love the tank pumping and the flooding. You know, these weird flash floods we're getting, they don't rise to the level of like an Irene for sure, but even localized, you get these 2-inch kind of spurts and your basement gets, you know, I would be very interested in that.
In this survey,
Yeah.
which question are you talking
Ask that
about?
question if your basement was it rains or?
Flooding in your site or in your basement, you know.
Number 32?
Yeah. there's some evidence to suggest that the majority of flooding related damage that we experience out there is these little localized events. And that's at a national level.
If you were to choose 3 questions maximum for this survey, what would they be? From wastewater.
Oh, from wastewater.
From this one section, what 3 questions do you think should be in there?
Pumping, flooding.
Do you know what your water system is?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know.
I've heard 27 and I've heard 32. And did you say 31, Chuck, as one that you might recommend?
No, Matt was suggesting 33.
33. Source? Who doesn't have a well in Grafton?
I was
I
gonna say.
put that in there and thought that probably shouldn't be in there just because, does anybody have, well, I guess up on our hill we have, I mean, we got trailers that have 5 trailers out in the woods all using one well, but I don't think that's the kind of community system they're talking about.
Are there any shared artesian wells that we know
Not that I'm looking.
Wouldn't matter.
Yeah, that's right. That's the one where, like Eric was saying, I agree with him. We can make real policy changes on energy, knowing how people are heating or driving. I don't see us making any changes to water or wastewater. And a large amount of that is regulated at the state now, so it's been taken out of the town's hands. That's been that way for 25 years.
Well, I think, I got a new view of this process after comments tonight. Again, I really like the saying, you've heard me say it before, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? There's a lot of stuff here. My thought is, let's find out the facts they want, and we've got a good start on that. But I think the next step will be, let's have a meeting and have the theme about transportation and energy. Because I got a whole bunch of opinion questions about those, but it's hard to discuss the opinion questions without the fact questions, because they're gonna blend together. I think the water wastewater is gonna be a similar situation, that we might just hold off on making decisions on this until I bring them together as a unit, so you can say, how do these flow together?
And a lot of this information is gonna come from just our study of the historic,
You have data sources without asking.
data
opinion?
of what's there now.
And
We're gonna find that out.
I think it was a great point. If the data's elsewhere, let's not bother people with survey questions.
So, by the way,
But-
back
but-
on, okay.
But we wanna segue back to the water or wastewater to get folks' opinions on, do you think we should be going in this direction?
Since we can't do anything with this until the town plan's approved, and that's gonna be a while, we've got time. Let me pull all my wastewater stuff together, and let's look at that as a separate document and see how those go together.
Yeah,
I think that'll help understand whether we should have all these
yeah,
or
and then
not.
we can discuss it as a subcommittee.
Yeah, and I'll send it to you and Chris, and you guys can take it to your group
Yeah.
and give us feedback. It's like some of the others, wastewater alone could be an entire survey, and maybe it should be.
Back on number 34, you've got a mistake.
Okay, go ahead.
I think you intended
Yeah.
Williams River. instead.
Williams, yes. Thank you. Definitely. Because I'm in the Williams River watershed. Where's there, oh. Any idea where Wright Creek is? Flows through my property. It's on the map. Starts out Wright Brook and becomes Wright Creek as it goes down past the fry place, so. That's where I think that came from, because there's Wright Cemetery down there by the fry place, and that's where it all came from, I think, so.
Yeah, right now, Jeff Nugent can do that analysis.
with a quick snapshot and account and be done with it, yeah.
It's an intersect command, and he's got great watershed data. He was showing it off to me 2 days ago. So he would just take the E911 data that we have, intersect it with the catchment area, and then we
To
would
my
know.
knowledge, oh no, I don't know. You got Eastman Road, that's all Williams River, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because on Fisher Hill, there's only 3 places. Mine, Kiminetti's, and then well, it's burned down, 2 places, sorry. We only have 2 places on my hill left to go that way.
Jeff can take it 2 steps more, which would be very interesting. You know, this is your watershed. This is the people in the river corridor. Not saying we should, you know, but I'm just saying this is potential impact. Here's the number of people in the flood hazard area, and we'd have those 3 or 4 data points, which would be very interesting. That's why we walked away from river corridors, both Rockingham and another town. It's a while back, because you look at, oh my God, we're going to impact X number of people. No, that's no good. You know, so it was. I think it underscored the importance of we're not going to just take this random data set because it's clearly it's going to impact several hundred structures. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna table a little bit on that one, so we can get a better picture by looking at the other stuff. It's actually in here, this other document I passed out, but it's not worth tonight trying to pull it out and look at it and make that analysis. Does energy fall into that same category without having the opinion questions? It's tough to look at the fact questions, or are those energy questions anything you want to keep and say, yeah, well, that has to be in there, or should be in there?
I think this is a case where we just simplify. I don't really have and Eric, this is more your bailiwick, but if you're doing oil propane, I just kind of think of you in the same category. Whereas, you know, wood and pellets is different, cow power from Green Mountains, you know, or electric in general. You could have another category to get rid of all these other, because we're getting more market penetration on geothermal, but these are still kind of very low percentages. But the nice part about this would be the base level data. So this is, we would know in 2020 essentially where we need to go. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Even if it shows that you only have X number of people doing geothermal, real small number.
I guess I'm biased because I'd really like to know this information. But whether or not it rises to the level of impacting town planning, well, some of it certainly does, but some of it, maybe going over the top. Having all of this information is certainly a valuable tool.
In your industry, do you see any, I mean, it's still fossil fuels, whether you're throwing propane through your furnace or number 2 heating oil, it's kind of that.
Although you see a big penetration of cordwood, particularly where you have a lower income group of houses, people, that's still the cheapest source of energy.
Or public administrators use.
Well, and because we're, as my family says, we're land rich but bank poor, you know, trees are free.
That's right.
So, I would recommend that I personally agree with Eric. I can't give you a definitive reason why, other than I like that kind of information to dig down as what kind of systems do you have. With that said, I would recommend as we look at these, that we kind of table them, and I bring this back with the energy questions, the same thing. There's more here than I think we can ask in our survey, but I think first couple of 3 would be appropriate. But again, we've already got, if we only keep the ones we say we want to keep, we have a full survey without asking any opinions. We've already sucked out the amount of time and energy they're willing to put into this thing. So again, I'm looking at the time as well, and I want to do one more thing, so I'm going to keep moving on. Internet. Do we want to ask a question about the internet? Question number 50. Do we care?
That data's already there.
Is it?
Yeah.
How? Where?
Jeff would probably have firm.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. again, it's a cut and paste I took from somebody else's survey to the question that both of you brought up multiple times. If we can get the data else somewhere, do we have to tie this question to any of the opinion questions? My opinion is no, but maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, and I don't think they classify it the same way, but, you know, I was recently asked, do we want to get involved in the broadband initiative? And I was like, well, we have quite an amount of coverage in Rockingham. But I was just pulling up a quick number of maps and could see, oh, we're pretty good. So those maps exist.
They do.
Yeah.
All right.
If they're the same maps that existed 5 or 10 years ago.
No, this is different. I know she's
Different, okay.
Yeah.
Maps in the past have been highly inaccurate, but we are blessed, I should say, with really high-speed broadband capability over the telephone lines here in Grafton,
Mhm.
with the exception of people that live off-grid that have to use satellite or some other means.
Is everybody in Grafton the telephone have that same access, is what you're saying? I don't know.
I think so.
That's what I was discovering in Rockingham. I was like, wow, there's very few people that don't have at least the potential to access, whether they choose to. is a
Separate
whole other
question.
issue. That's right.
There'd be people that are on the Chester side of town.
Mhm.
Well, that's still retail. I don't think there are any residences that are not served by VTEL in town, or a satellite system.
Well, if we can get it elsewhere and it doesn't tie to the survey, I'd say move on. The last little section I got here, as you notice, is just community. And you know, I got 2 questions on the very back page. What community clubs are you involved in? And I only listed 2. And maybe it's not important, but it's a curiosity question is, you know, if we go through and a lot of people aren't involved in anything, what does that say about our community? And to make this question work, we need a list of what, 15 things? There's more than 2.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I mean, what are the other things? GIA, church, fire department?
I was startled to see how few people go to the library. And, you know, for me, I go to the library 4 or 5 times a week, so it's like a very common thing. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, but the public library, you know, just to see how many people use it. I mean, that's just essential to the services that we offer and how we prioritize those services.
But what would our list look like? I mean, I got 3 things. Fire department, women, community, church, I got 4 things.
Well, it was fire, that was rescue.
And then rescue could be separate from fire, yeah.
We already know how many people attend the planning commission meetings.
I could put,
Thursday night football,
So you-
dances every time.
Historical Society,
there we go.
Grafton Cares.
How about put one item as, you know, I am involved in some piece of the town government. That would include you, me, select board listers, dog catcher,
Yeah, that's.
you know, all of those people that you see in the front of the town report.
Involvement, or government involvement,
Town government
Community
involvement.
volunteer.
community volunteer, yeah.
What else do we have? And we do, is a question that's, I can't help myself, I'm gonna pose it in the way of the answer I want. We do wanna stay in Grafton only and not list places outside of Grafton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't wanna put down the Chester Elks or something like that, for example.
Grafton Outing Club.
There you go, thank you.
Oh, that's a big one.
Grafton Community Band.
Let's see. Again, because time is not imperative to get this done, it's a starting list. We'll send it out, we'll send it to people at the select board and others and saying, what am I missing? And we'll just keep growing it. And we'll always have the last one being other that we forgot kind of thing. Outing Club Community Band. What about coaching little leagues and things like that? The kids' sports, is that not a?
School
School
volunteer.
activity, yeah, school volunteer activities. School
Yeah, because they
activity,
have
school
like-
activity volunteer.
I don't know, is there a separate recreation committee? I'm not,
Just the outing club is that,
that's different.
yeah. You know,
This is
it's-
gonna be such an interesting question, because there's gonna be a high degree of correlation. If you fill out the survey, chances are
You're involved.
you're involved. But it'll still be very
Yeah, it's
interesting.
a really interesting point. Alright, it's a start, we'll revisit the list a couple of times and we'll see where it goes. What events have you attended in the past year? Same question. I put down a couple of things to get me thinking, but there's 100 other things and maybe you could expand that list. There's no reason these can't be fill in the blank, but you know, I would think if you can make it a multiple choice, it would spark more people giving answers.
That's right.
What else is there to do in Grafton? I mean, you put everything like snowmobiling and that kind of stuff. I was looking for events, community events kind of stuff.
Christmas in Grafton, just this past weekend.
You can ask, you know, they can say nothing. You
Yep. This is a select all that apply kind of thing, so
Okay,
they
yeah.
choose nothing. What's the thing that the Wyndham Foundation does? Is it the ice bar, or what do they do that night thing where they?
Yeah, the ice bar,
Is that what it's called, the ice bar?
winter ice bar.
Winter ice bar.
Winter ice bar? Wouldn't be a summer ice bar.
No,
Oh, it would be nice.
yeah, both.
Well, you know what I can do is I can pull out a year's worth, because we can save them all, of the Grafton Town News, and I bet you each one of those under announcements will have a list of things that will generate some ideas.
Burger and brew night,
You know, I thought about that as a community event. I mean,
it's becoming a community event.
it is. I you snicker, but I agree with him. I think it's interesting because I don't go to it much. When I go, it's a big turnout of community members show up to that thing. So.
Yeah, it's a great way to see everyone.
Yeah, good litmus test. People I tend to like burgers and beer.
So those are fact questions for tonight. We're going to revisit these as they apply to the opinion questions next. What other factual information should we want to collect that you didn't see here from our community? Color of hair, whatever.
Send out a survey, what would you like to see in a survey?
That's a perfect question. He's got it. Essay form.
I think I'm really selling myself on the idea, though, of some young people, you know, high school seniors or
Doing
something
footwork?
like that, getting to know their community, appreciating their neighbors, but
Now, if
also,
we connect these kids early, Bells Falls still has forced volunteerism, right? I think they do.
I'm not sure.
You can't graduate without volunteering 40 hours?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
it's forced volunteerism.
yeah.
But this would count towards that if you got kids that are interested in doing it.
Plus, we could do a stipend or something like that. This would.
Well, that can't be volunteers.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Burger and brew.
Yeah, really. There's ways around that.
You could add a little bit of enticement for people to complete the survey with their interviewer, and they get handed a coupon to be entry point to
Community event.
some kind of a community event.
That's true.
There's some fee.
If everybody that completes a
$100
survey,
off your tax bill.
All right.
I could fill it out.
everyone that completes a survey gets into Burger and Brew Night for free. They gotta pay for the burger and brew, but they get into the building for free.
And do there was no catch.
No cover charge.
Exactly. We'll make little coupons. All right. We have not completed it. I hope you see where I'm going. We're making sausage. I think we got a lot done tonight. It's not concrete, but we're eliminating stuff and moving stuff. I'm gonna clean this up. I'll send it out to you and we'll continue the discussion from there. Anything else on survey at this point? It's like our town plan. I've been working on it for more than a year now. We're getting there. It's one thing at a time. Anything under new business?
You've got budget.
What's that?
You've got the FY '21 budget on there.
Where? You looking at the right one?
No? Oh, that's November.
Oh, okay.
Did the wrong one.
You know what? I didn't change much, did I? Just get to the very end and realize I have the wrong one. Yeah, budget was last month, and we had approved one, sent it to the select board, and I didn't hear any feedback, so I assume they didn't have a problem with it. Next, I do have the wrong next meeting though. Let's get that corrected. Next meeting is January 14th. Here at 6:30. Any other business before we go into executive session? Eric, make a motion, if you could, go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
We are moving into executive session, take your time and